Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. Frozen, neck is frozen, catch me rolling, I'm the
Welcome to Saturday Morning Inspection. I'm Nick Rudman, joined as always by the fellow with the hair colored yellow. That's Andrew Mize. We are not your big typical sports media show. We don't have the big budgets, we don't have the fancy suits, we don't have the talking heads. But we got to make up for it. We got to work ridiculously hard, do our research, and be, as always, ridiculously good looking.
That's right, Nick. We are not big sports media. Don't have all of the stuff that they have. No budgets, no anything like that. It's just us doing our thing the best that we can. And when we do our thing, we can do nothing if not for you, the viewer. We rely on you. We count on you. So whether you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, we can't thank you enough. If you could leave us a comment, subscribe on YouTube, give us a like on any of our videos. It all goes so far in helping us boost our way through the algorithm, getting more views, growing as a channel. And we've made leaps and bounds so far. So get in early. We're a good show. I think we put in the work. And things have been going really great, way better than I thought they would early on. So, like as always, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, we're at Saturday Morning Inspection. If you want to check us out on Twitter or Facebook, it's at SMI Football Show. And as always, you can find all of the late breaking news of the NFL and all of our social media links and videos on our website, smishow.com. Nick, we have a fantastic show today, packed full of all kinds of NFL goodies. We're coming close to the end of the year, and we've got a lot of great videos coming out this week. So without any further ado, let's get into our first topic. I like to call them mine now because I've been pulling for them for so long. My Detroit Lions have beaten the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, not even beat them, right? They demolished them. This game was 17-0, 24-3, and then finally 30-12. This game was never close. You got Motor City Dan Campbell leading the charge up there in Detroit. He got them playing hard earlier in the season. They finally got their first win 2 weeks ago, and guess what? They're beating some good teams right now. This Detroit Lions team, they're on a little bit of a roll right now.
Absolutely, and like people, obviously, I always pick the Lions, but people are like, "Oh, the Lions, they're the worst team in the NFL. Probably gonna get first pick in the draft." They're going up against Cardinals. Some are saying, we even said in our mock draft last week, best team in the draft. We had them ranked number 32. How can the worst team beat the best team any given Sunday, baby? It doesn't matter. These are all professional athletes playing on this field. Everybody has a chance to win at any moment. And not only win, if you don't look out, you get punched in the mouth, and that is what happened to the Cardinals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you talk about what's happening to the Cardinals, and we're seeing a little bit of a trend last 3 seasons. And if you want to go ahead and pull it up.
I got it.
Ever since Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach of Arizona, and Kyler Murray, the quarterback, joined 3 years ago, we've starting to see how this plays out. Murray's rookie year, Kingsbury's first year, they start off pretty good, 3-1. They fall apart down the stretch, 2-7, 10-loss season, totally out of it. Last year, pretty good start. They started 5-2, right in the thick of it in the division. 3-5 down the stretch. They missed the playoffs 8-8. This year, they started 7-0. Number one team in the NFL by far. It starts with losing to the Green Bay Packers without Devontae Adams. They're now 3-4 in their last 7, and their schedule gets even tougher. Like they like to say, right? If something happens once, it could be a fluke. If it happens 3 times, that's a trend.
Absolutely. And the Cardinals are trending down. They are not a strong second half team. I've never really had a ton of confidence in the Cardinals. They have a tough division, and it's like you said, they seem like a team that can roll out of the gate pretty fast, but once that first punch in the mouth kind of comes, they back down. They're not as go-getter anymore. They get knocked down a couple times and they don't get back up.
There's a saying in sports that your team kind of takes the personality of your head coach. You look at the Ravens, right? You got Harbaugh. They're kind of a feisty gambler kind of team. You've got the Seahawks with Pete Carroll. They're kind of hooting, hollering, jumping around, crazy. Bill Belichick, Patriots, they're all solemn, do your job. Cliff Kingsbury is kind of a pretty boy, right? That's what he is. 100% honest, good for him. I'm sure he's got a rocking social life. But the Cardinals have taken that personality a little bit. Things are going good. They're all smile. Things are, to cruise down Rodeo Drive. Everything's awesome. But like you said, they get hit in the mouth a little bit, just like the pretty boy, right? He gets hit in the mouth. He doesn't like that, right? So he kind of skulks off in the corner. That's what the Cardinals have been doing right now. They lack the toughness. This is not a mentally or physically tough football team. They brought in J.J. Watt to maybe help with that a little bit. Well, he's hurt. He's out. I don't see them turning it around anytime soon.
I don't either. And speaking of a team that really, I'm not sure where they're trending. The Tennessee Titans have managed, and I say this with the utmost respect for the Titans, but they have managed to lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a feat that I did not think was possible.
Yeah, this was an absolutely blown game by Tennessee, up double digits at the half in Pittsburgh. They fumbled on 3 straight drives in the second half. They end up getting stopped on 4th down deep in Pittsburgh territory. They lose to the Steelers 19-13, and they fall to 9-5. The Tennessee Titans do. The Steelers improve to 7-6-1. I think the biggest story here is, we talk about a lot. The Steelers are terrible. They are not a good team. All right, looking at the numbers, Roethlisberger's 24th in quarterback rating. The running game is second to last in the NFL. They're number 31, even with Najee Harris. They're 21st in points allowed, and they're middle of the pack in terms of turnover ratio, plus minus. They're literally good at nothing, but yet they're a half game out of the playoffs right now. I mean, this has to be Mike Tomlin's just coaching job of his life, right? Is he not the coach of the year for what he's done with his team?
I mean, he definitely has a case. He's made it. Tomlin does a lot with a little bit. Ben's not great. The defense has been suspect at times, really. It's really kind of dependent on if TJ Watt is healthy or not, because he goes in and out of games so quickly. You don't really know. But Tomlin really has strung together some strong performance. They're a very gritty team. As a divisional rival, I watch Pittsburgh play all the time, and my uncle loves Pittsburgh, so I watch them play even more. They're just a team that finds a way to win. Mike Tomlin's always been that kind of coach. It almost him and Harbaugh complement each other, being in the same division very well. They just find a way to win, and it's in the end of Ben's life as a quarterback. I believe he's gone after this year, if I would have to be a betting man. But no matter who's on that squad, they always manage to sneak up on you. So you just got to be careful.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is just it's got to be understanding the personnel. I feel like the Steelers are really, really good at this. They understand that they're really bad on defense, to be honest, but they have a couple superstars. You mentioned TJ Watt's one of them. So all they do is just try and isolate TJ Watt and say, hey, look, if TJ Watt has to get 3 sacks for us to win, so we're going to put him in positions to get sacks. They look at Roth, hey, look, Big Ben cannot move at all. We want him to move. We want him to scramble or bootleg in our offense. He can't move. He's a statue. So we're not even going to try it. We're not even going to mess with that. We don't have really good receivers. We got Claypool can win one-on-ones and then a bunch of guys who run slants, okay? We are literally going to run 85 slants and 5 deep plays, and that's our offense. And I think a lot of credit has to go to Tomlin for understanding that. I think a lot of coaches would have tried to do way more than they had. They'd have tried to incorporate things, maybe do bootlegs with Roethlisberger, which would have been a disaster, or maybe try some more exotic stuff on defense, and that certainly would not have worked with the talent they have. So credit to Tomlin for understanding. It's kind of weird to say, for understanding your team stinks, but still maximizing it so their team is actually winning, right? It's very impressive by him.
Absolutely. Nick, our next topic that we're going to be speaking on is something both of us are very in tune with, alternative sports media and the growth of alternative sports media. Last week, we saw Pat McAfee sign a huge deal. A few years ago, this company, Barstool, had signed a huge deal. And I think alternative sports media is the largest growing thing that is out there, and I think it scares regular media so much so that we have an example. Barstool Sports recently just bought the naming rights to a college football bowl game, and they streamed it through their platform and other social media, but no one is saying how great this is for everybody. Everyone in the mainstream media field has just been bashing them. It's absolutely crazy to me. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this article is from USA Today, and you'll notice by the screen we cut the author out of it because the way it was written, this guy's a total hack. And the reason he's a total hack is because what Barstool did with this bowl is unprecedented. Like, bowl games are televised, CBS, ESPN, Fox. That's just how they are. That's just how they work. That's how they've always been. Barstool, after winning the rights, bidding for the rights and winning the rights, they're streaming it, like you said, through their own platform. It's a new age, right? Because they don't have to pay for that extra infrastructure, they have more cameras, right? You see that downloaded, highlighted there in the middle of the page. They have more cameras than the CBS crew would have. They're actually improving the quality of product. But the people in the classic big sports media, like you see here in this USA Today article, they can't get over that. They can't think of what the future could be. Instead, they got to find things to attack. And this just blows my mind. This first little paragraph here, this snippet, I'm just going to go through this real quick. This is a quote, right? So the author of this article went out of his way, right, to find somebody somewhere to say something bad about Barstool and sponsorship. So this game, the Barstool Bowl, is between Boise State and Central Michigan. So where did they find a person to quote for this article? A University of Nevada, Las Vegas professor. And I'm going to quote the article here. It says, it's difficult to see a justification for any institution of higher education to align their brand with a sponsor like Barstool, said Nancy Lowe, a professor at UNLV with expertise in sports marketing. Who the heck is Professor Lowe, and what relevance does this have? Like, the only thing this author did was literally, I have no doubt in my mind, because this is how it works. They literally went through and sent out probably a mass email to hundreds of people, found one person to say something negative, and that's what they quoted, because they don't like Barstool because they're competitive, right? It's a whole different it's a disruptive force Barstool is with the way they want to stream the content they create to the classic media. And you can see it down there. This is when Dave Portnoy was quoted, about on his podcast. I'm going to read that real quick. It says, "We're willing to be title sponsor and let CBS do the broadcast. CBS didn't want to work with us. They view us as a competitor." It's exactly right, like you said, where these big sports media, whether it's CBS, whether it's the USA Today Sports, they absolutely detest Barstool. And it's not like they see Barstool as a threat and they see him as an up-and-comer. I think that's one thing that we're getting wrong. I did some research to look into this, and I want your thoughts with this after I'm done, is that Barstool Sports sold a stake of their company to Penn National Gambling Company, valuing Barstool Sports at $450 million, the whole company. So USA Today is part of Gannett Media, which owns about 50 newspapers. That whole company, Gannett Media, is worth about $750 million, all of it, all 30 newspapers. USA Today is a big paper, no doubt about that. But it's definitely not worth $750 million, the whole company. I'd say maybe a third at the maximum. So we'll say $250 million. Right now, Barstool, I would say, is worth at minimum $200 million more than USA Today. It's not a competition anymore. Barstool is dominating them, and I think that's the problem. I think they are not mad that they have competition. They're mad that they're losing.
And it's simple math here, Nick. In the past week, I've probably watched maybe 4 or 5 Barstool videos and read maybe 1 or 2 of their articles. You know how many USA Today articles I've read? 0, because they probably lock it behind some sort of paywall where you have to pay $1 a week or $1 a month to read any of their articles, just like all these other big media sites have been doing lately. All Barstool's content is free to watch, unless it's like a pay-per-view type thing, but that's a little bit different story. They publish all their videos daily. There's multiple videos they publish on YouTube, just like us. They have bloggers that are writing articles all the time. And they have radio stations as well. They're like a triple threat. They hit all 3 facets of the media. And like you said, it's not even close anymore. I don't even give USA Today the time of day. I think our generation really has kicked by traditional sports media and gravitated to this new alternative sports media. And I think it's something that people need to watch out for, because if you keep disrespecting companies like this, they're clearly bigger company than USA Today, name recognition wise. You're going to get left in the dust, and we won't even know who USA Today is 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah, and you brought it up right now. And I think that the article, so the only person in the whole article USA Today interviewed or quoted that was any sort of value was the Bowl Games executive director. That's Kim Adair. And, and she has all the actual influence of the game. She's the big one. And she talked about in the article, this is the only thing that matters, and we have it highlighted there, is that Barstool's blowing up the traditional model. You said it, like, no one's watching or no one's reading USA Today. We're all watching Barstool. We're all watching all these different alternative sports and media. And it says there in the article, it says it like they even are admitting it now, that Barstool is blowing it up, and then they're blowing up the model. They're changing the way we're watching sports, viewing sports, watching any sort of content. It's not just sports now. And they are absolutely scared to death. And this is what happens, right? You get hack writing jobs like this, right? Even the title just is annoying. Barstool Sports Bowl Game. Toxic sponsorship for college football, innovative, or both? This is innovative, right? This is literally in the article, 36 cameras instead of 16, streaming. So you don't have to sit in front of a TV or have a cable channel. You can
watch on your phone.
Yeah, watch it on your phone, watch it on any device. This is innovation. This is what we should be looking for out of all kind of media companies, including those like USA Today. And this is why they're dying. This is probably, I'm going to be honest, USA Today should probably write us a royalty check, because this is probably the most conversation they have on any of their pieces right now this week. It's just you and I talking about it on our show. So
absolutely.
This is,
another thing you see, one of the final things we talk about is just the formatting. Like, of course, they capitalize toxic, but they leave innovative with lowercase I, leave left emphasis off of it. Like, this is clearly an article that was never meant to be comparative. It's not innovative or both. They don't care. They're clearly stating we think it's toxic, it's degrading to how we feel things are supposed to be. They never wanted to give this bowl game a chance.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Just the overall tone and message is that Barstool is bad. They shouldn't be allowed to watch or host a bowl game, sponsor a bowl game, and then stream it. But the real message here, right, and you hit on it earlier, and I want to circle back to it real quick, is that no one's watching USA Today or reading USA Today. Everyone's watching Barstool. Well, really what this article is saying, and this is what one of the big problems is with big sports media, is that this isn't an attack on Barstool necessarily. It is, but really it's an attack on the fans of sports right now, right? It's the fans of that, like USA Today and all these guys like that. They don't like the people that follow sports or, go to these college games or whatever and involved in that. They don't like it, right? They don't like the fact that the fans of sports have made Barstool more important than them. In their minds, they should be more important, right? Maybe they went to the fancy school. Maybe they got the nice degree. They have the big budgets. They should be more important. These guys who wear like T-shirts and jeans and flip-flops and make like random blogs and stuff should not be hundreds of millions of dollars more valuable than they are. And that they just resent the fact that the fans made them that way. And we're just seeing it. And I think it's going to get worse. And I think it's almost exciting to see a little bit, to see how much power these alternative sports media entities are going to get in the coming years to come.
But like you said, I can't wait to see it happen. But that's enough about USA Today. Can't have enough about Barstool, really. But someone who's a big fan, Barstool's a big fan of, they talk about him quite often. Big Cat, being a Chicago Bears fan, hates his guts. But Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to let you explain this next segment, because I don't want to do it in injustice by trying to butcher your methods here. But why don't you get into our next segment for us?
Sure. So, this is really kind of an extra level thinking here. And we're kind of at the end of the season. So the NFL is doing a lot of, well, who's the MVP? And right now people say, well, there's no runaway favorites. There's a lot of guys. Is it Brady? Is it Rodgers? Is it Mahomes? Is it Jonathan Taylor, the running back from Indianapolis? And I wanted to take a deeper look at some of these numbers, like next level data. Like we always say, we do our research, we work really hard. I wanted to do that and, do that make some good quality content here. And what I found is I looked up a formula and I found it and I like it. It's called Pythagorean win expectation. And I'll bore you with the details, but basically what it does is it takes the points you score and the points you give up, and it creates a ratio between the two using some math, and it creates a factor for quality. So, for example, if you score 100 points over 3 games and you give up 50, that's a pretty good ratio, right? Because you outscored your opponents by 50 points. Now, even though let's say you lost one of those games, that number, that quality ratio will still say you're a good team because you still scored a lot of points and didn't give up very many. So this is kind of a ratio using this data to kind of see, okay, who naturally just has a good team? Who has a quality team? And using that ratio, we can kind of then take that and figure out how many teams or how many wins a team should get. So a quality team would have a higher ratio, they're going to have more wins. A lesser team would have a lower ratio, they're going to have less wins. Pretty simple. And so there you see on the screen right there, you see our top 3 and bottom 3 in actual wins. So you've got the Packers, the Cowboys, the Bucks at the top right there. And the big thing I want to hit on is you see the projected and the actual. So the projected is the Pythagorean theorem formula that I talked about before that figures out based on the points scored and points given up how many teams you should have. And look at the Cowboys and the Bucks, right? When you compare the actual versus the projected, and look over to the delta column there, it's pretty close, right?
Real close.
Less than 1, real close, right on the money. You even go down to some of the bottom teams, right? You see, they're within some reason, right? You look at the Jaguars and the Jets, right? They're relatively close between the points they give up and the points they score. Obviously, they're bad teams, so they give up a lot more than they score. But there's a huge outlier, and it's right at the top, and that's the Green Bay Packers. Based on the points they score and the points they give up. Remember, that ratio tells you the quality of team, tells you the quality of the offense, the defense, special teams, coaching staff, everything. Offensive line, defensive line, everything. Based on the quality of that team, they're projected to have 8 wins, 8.5 wins about right now. They have 11. That delta, that 2.5, that is the Aaron Rodgers factor right there. He is essentially, instead of the Packers being a fringe playoff team, they're the best team in the NFL with him on the field. This is unbelievable. There's no one even remotely close, especially in the MVP race. I mean, you look at Prescott's, he's adding half a win. Brady's adding a little more than half a win, right? These are the guys at the top. These are the MVP favorites, and Rodgers is just leaps and bounds above them all.
Yeah, and I think looking at the list a little deeper, like there are teams that are less impactful than they should be that are in a close delta margin to them, like in the -2 range, where they're underperforming comparatively to their team's talent. There's a couple teams that maybe are within the ballpark of this, but nobody is really performing quite as well as Aaron Rodgers has this season. And like you said, 8 wins, and Aaron Rodgers himself just being on the field gives you 3 extra wins. That's pretty insane. That if any coach said, hey, I need to draft a player, and this guy, if we draft him, we're going to get 3 guaranteed extra wins per year, I don't think there's any coach on the planet that wouldn't try to pick that guy up.
Well, and take it a step further, right? So you see the Jaguars and the Bucks there, and the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, who's played poorly, right? They're underperforming by about half, -0.5, right? Look at the Bucks; they're overperforming by 0.5, 0.6, roughly. So the difference between Tom Brady's level of overperformance and the Jaguars level with Trevor Lawrence level of underperformance, that's about 1, right? -0.5 to 0.5, about 1 win. That's the total aggregate difference. Rodgers is 2.5, is 3, like you said. I mean, it's orders of magnitude outside of everything else. It is so clear cut who the MVP is. I'm very curious to see if it shouldn't even be a competition when you look at it now, right? Especially after the way Brady played against the Saints. This is Rodgers' award to lose at this point, and the numbers here just back it up emphatically.
It's and I'll clarify it for somebody because it kind of clicked for me when you explain it that way. Basically, what you're saying is the difference of if the Bucks had Trevor Lawrence or if the Jags had Tom Brady isn't that different. Like you said, it's about a half game up, half game down. The Bucks would be a half game worse with Lawrence, more or less, and the Jags could be a half game up with Brady. On paper, obviously things can change, but to be 3 games for the Jags to have 5 wins now, if they put Aaron Rodgers on that team, this is what the numbers are telling us. That is just so unbelievably crazy that you add one player onto a team and all of a sudden they go from worst team in the league to middle of the road, even, so to speak, 5 wins, 6 wins. That's, like you said, it's not even close.
Well, and this is why, Rodgers knows he's this good, and the Packers have to know Rodgers is this good. Because, at a certain point, he was the MVP last year with similar kind of performance. At a certain point, he has to be like, look, guys, I know, aside from Devontae Adams, we don't have anybody on the receiver side. I know our offensive line isn't very good. I know our tight end is a 35-year-old guy in Mercedes Lewis who hasn't been really a star player for about a decade. He has to know that, and he's still winning games, still putting up big numbers. I think just this disparity is mind-blowing when you look at it. The more and more you look at the data, it's, we always think that there's tiers of quarterbacks, right? But right now there's only one guy at the top tier, and that's Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely. And speaking of tiers or rankings and things like that, for our commentary segment coming up, we would like to do something a little bit different. Let's pick 5 topics that have been out throughout this past year in the NFL. And as we did last week, ranking with emojis, let's give it a little simpler ranking status. Let's give it a thumbs up or thumbs down comparative to how we think the NFL has handled those things. What do you think?
I think that's a great segment, man. Let's get right into it.
All right. So first up, this one is pretty easy. I'll give you a gimme. Refs, Nick. What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down, and then we'll explain.
I think we're both in agreement. This is thumbs down 100%, right?
Absolutely. So thumbs down on the refs. What is your thoughts on this?
So the thing with the refs, and there's always complaints about the refs every year. It just is. It's just the way sports is, just how it works. The NFL with the officiating this year has been so bad. The taunting penalties and the personal foul roughing the passers have been absolutely egregious. There's the Cassius Marsh taunting penalty that cost the Bears a win. There seems to be one every week, right? You had Mike Pereira, who's a former VP of NFL officiating, former head honcho of NFL. He is a guy who is always sticking up for refs. He went on an interview and said, yeah, refs are afraid to officiate. It's really bad. He wishes it could be better. Literally everyone across the board has hated the refs this year. They've changed games completely. There's always the funny meme. It seems every game there's a really bad roughing the passer. There's always a meme that goes around, about, we need to ban that player, the most brutal hit of all time and stuff like that. It has gotten bad. And the problem is that the worse it gets, I think the refs get more and more gun shy, which makes it even worse. It's just a feedback loop, and the NFL has lost control.
Absolutely. And, there's been plenty of games we've talked about this week, that's the most brutal hit I've ever seen. I think there was a Steelers Titans hit where the Titans player trips over and barely falls into Ben's leg, and all of a sudden he acts like his leg has snapped in half, and they call roughing passer. It's gotten out of control. And it's been the last few years, but it really, really seems to have propelled itself further than it ever has before this year in particular. All right, Nick. Next up, let's take a look at the NFL's approach on social justice. What do you think about this?
So I'm going to go thumbs down real quick, and then do you agree or you disagree?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so the social justice thing, and here's the thing. Right now in the world and really in the country, right, on 99.999% of issues, we're split right down the middle. You got half the people disagree, half the people think one way, the other half of people disagree and complete the exact same opposite. It's just the way the world is, just the way the country is right now. Well, the NFL has done something remarkable here. It took social justice and started trying to implement policies and things like that in a way that really irritated and annoyed, half the country who felt that kind of stuff shouldn't be in sports. So it pissed off that half of the country. And then when it tried to implement those policies or say they were going to, they really didn't do anything with them, anything at all, really. So then in the process of doing that, they pissed off the other half of the country. So the NFL has done something remarkable here. It has managed to find a way to irritate both sides of the country equally at the exact same time.
Yeah, and like you said, some people believe it shouldn't be in sports, and be that as it may, other people wanted the NFL to take a stance on this and do something because a lot of players may be affected by some of the injustices that they're saying are out there. And what is the most that the NFL has done is put in racism in the end zone of the fields, put little slogans on the back of the helmets, maybe put a few Black Lives Matter signs in the stadium. They haven't put their money where their mouth is. Maybe they've donated to a couple charities. They haven't taken a stance. I think they've been lukewarm on this at best. Like you said, they piss off the people who don't want it to be in sports. Okay, but we're going to piss you off by putting it into the sports. But now that we put it in, we're not actually going to do anything about it. So I think it pisses everybody off tenfold because the guys who are like, okay, if you're going to put it in, at least do something about it. Like, give me a reason to be pissed off. Like, it's crazy how they can take something that's so simple and botch it so bad. All right, Nick. Moving on from that one, let's go to the NFLPA, the Players Association. What do you think there?
So I'm going to give the NFL a thumbs up.
I agree with you. Thumbs up.
And the reason for it is not because the NFL treats the NFLPA really, really well. It's that the NFL absolutely crushes the NFLPA. I always love the NFLPA when they come in with their lawyers and all this stuff for these collective bargaining agreement discussions. And they always come in and say, they leave the agreement and say, we got everything we wanted and, we're very happy with it. The NFLPA goes into these discussions with the NFL, which is literally ran by nothing but lawyers funded by 32 billionaires. Yeah. The NFLPA loses that by a lot every single time. And the NFL they got to be laughing behind closed doors because they get almost everything they want every single time. They demolish the NFLPA, and at the same time, they somehow find a way to make the NFLPA think they got something. It's literally like a guy who's like going in to negotiate a raise, and he accepts a pay cut instead, and he walks out the door, like, thanks his boss. Like, that's how bad it is, and the NFL just demolishes them all the time.
Yeah, and you got to feel bad for him for a sense. I always like to think like this past year, or maybe it's 2 years ago, the NFLPA, the thing they wanted to hang their hat on is no more testing for marijuana. Well, okay, the NFL counters with, we'll do that, but we're going to add an extra game onto the season. And we're going to do stuff with player salaries and things like that. So it's like you said, we're not going to test for marijuana. And the marijuana test was a joke anyways, because the test was a certain date, and once you got tested, you didn't get tested at all for the rest of the year until the next year, unless you got put into the counseling program. But so it wasn't even like a thing anyways. All you had to do is get clean one time. Like, they all right, we're going to give up everything to get rid of marijuana testing. Like, why can't you, get benefits for older players or something like that? Do anything. But like you said, they just get bulldozed by the NFL, so.
It's funny. Can you imagine that negotiation? The NFL, who pays for the testing, right, goes in the negotiation and okay, we want more games, we want more revenue, we want the owners to make more money out of this. How the heck are we going to do this? And is there any way we can lower costs? There's no way we can get both. And the NFLPA is like, okay, we want you to stop paying for testing and we'll play another game.
It's like a gold mine.
Okay, signed. It's hilarious.
All right. Next up, this might be surprising to some people, but COVID. What else could we talk about this year? I promise we won't talk about COVID itself. Nick, what is your thoughts on the NFL's approach to COVID this year?
So this has only changed recently, but I'm going to switch to a thumbs up.
I agree. As of late, they've done a much better job, in my opinion.
Right. So, like you and I have been talking about, the fact that they decided, to say, look, we're no longer going to do all this daily testing, and if someone's close to you who tested positive, you have to get tested and all these protocols. They said, enough of that. If you've gotten the shots, and you're asymptomatic, you don't have to get tested ever, no matter what. Doesn't matter. And that just makes it so much better because that's the whole purpose, right? If you don't have the disease, right, if you don't have any of the symptoms or things like that, there's no reason to get tested anyway. So don't make it harder on teams to field games, right? There was a lot of games that got moved this past weekend just for that, right? I think the Browns had like 20 guys out, and they were all asymptomatic and they're all vaccinated. And, why would they move that game? These guys are fine. They just tested positive because the variant was just in their nose or something like that. It was a stupid policy. Glad they changed it and they moved on. They were smarter. They were flexible. Give the NFL a lot of credit here, too, for one other thing. Remember, before the season, they said, we are not going to move any games, no matter what. Not going to happen. Well, they finally got to the end of the season, and we're like, well, we had a really dumb policy, and we're not going to screw a bunch of teams just because we're going to have everyone get, a bunch of positives. Everyone's going to have starting quarterbacks and star players out and coaches out. Enough of that. We're changing our policy, and we're going to move games this week just to clean it up a little bit. So I give the NFL a thumbs up for being flexible and finally getting with the program.
Yeah, way to pivot on something that you took a staunch stance on in the beginning. And it's like you kind of brought it up, and I'll touch on this just briefly. If you were to call the hospital, if you were to call your local testing center and be like, hey, I want to get a COVID test. I don't have any symptoms. They would tell you, no, don't get tested. If you have no symptoms, it's not worth getting tested. Just wait until you have symptoms, and then we can go get tested. And it's like you said, it seems like a waste of time if they're vaccinated, if they're asymptomatic. There's no point in testing those players. So moving on to our last, probably my favorite topic, the NFL and streaming services. Nick, what do you think about this? I think I know.
I'm going to go thumbs up here, a little tentative thumbs up, but I'm going to explain why in a second. What do you think?
I think, in theory, it is the best idea that they have possibly come up with.
Yeah, and I agree. That's exactly where I'm going with. And I think you hit it on one of our earlier shows. Why are NFL games not live streamed? Why are we always just a slave to local market games? And the NFL is we see these conversations with Amazon, right? With Amazon Prime and some of these other deals, these other streaming services. Amazon is bidding really, really hard for Thursday Night Football next year. And guess what Amazon's doing? They're bringing in the big guns. They're bidding for Al Michaels. They're bidding for Troy Aikman. They're building a team. And if Amazon can build a team, and if there's a company that has deep pockets, it's Amazon. I guarantee their next thing is they're going to create a package, right? Like Sunday Ticket for streaming. And I think that's exactly what NFL fans want. That's exactly what NFL fans need. And I think that's where the NFL is going. I think the NFL is going to license those games to Amazon Prime the way they did with NFL Sunday Ticket and DirecTV. And I couldn't be happier if that happens.
And I think, what was Sunday Ticket? I think it's something like $300 a season or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty high.
If you told me that all I had to do was have Amazon Prime, which is like $250 a year, and then pay $300 a season to watch every game whenever I wanted streaming, I would absolutely pay that. There's no question in my mind. I would throw my money at the TV to get something like that because of how bad it is now. The NFL is just missing on tons and tons of revenue. I don't pay for anything right now. I would pay for that in a heartbeat.
And there's such a, the NFL, because there's only the major networks really have the infrastructure to broadcast games, right? CBS, NBC, ESPN, ABC, and Fox. So, right, the NFL, while they make an ungodly amount of money in these TV deals, they really don't have any control of the distribution, right? The local networks, they're the ones in these, not local networks, but these big networks, they're the ones that film it. They come up with the, how it's going to be viewed and displayed for everybody to see, with their pregame shows and their how they just go the telecast. I think if the NFL partners with like Amazon, a company like Amazon, they'll have a lot more creative control. And I think there's a lot the NFL could do with that. Can you imagine? I'm thinking imagining two games simultaneously on your screen, right, left and right,
at the same, crazy.
Like the old pictures with people watching 10 TVs at once. I think stuff like that's coming right around the corner. I really do. I think the NFL's been really forward thinking on this, and that's why I gave them a thumbs up.
Absolutely. All right. And now that we have gotten that under control, this brings us to one of our favorite segments, our top 5 segment. Nick, why don't you tell the people what our top 5 is this week.
Right. So the season's winding down. We talked about MVP discussion going on. Well, it's also Rookie of the Year discussion going on. And we're giving some love here to the offensive side of the football. And we did some thinking, and we each came up with a list of the top 5 rookie seasons in the NFL, offensive only. So each of us have a list. We're going to go through the top 5 rookie seasons in NFL history. And I'm going to go ahead and go first, and then you want to follow up after me?
Sure.
Sure. So I'm going to go number 5 for me. This is Ben Roethlisberger with the Steelers in 2004. People forget, but Ben Roethlisberger was kind of a small name, right? He came out of the MAC conference, went to the University of Miami, Ohio, got drafted in the middle first round by the Steelers, who many people thought already were okay with quarterback. They had Tommy Maddox. Maddox gets hurt, and then Roethlisberger comes in and literally does not lose a game, right, until the AFC Championship game. Goes 15-1, first time a rookie's ever done that, and then wins a playoff game at home against the Jets before losing to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. It's unbelievable. You always talk about rookies struggling. Ben Roethlisberger didn't lose until the AFC Championship game. An absolutely unbelievable start to his career, which has been a Hall of Fame career, and it began with his rookie year in 2004. Number 4 on my list, Torrey Holt, wide receiver with the then St. Louis Rams in 1999. So people forget, right? This was 1999. The Rams were terrible. Coming off a really bad year. They got Marshall Faulk. They had Trent Green at quarterback. He got hurt. Some guy named Kurt Warner comes up out of nowhere. But they also got wide receiver Torrey Holt in the first round that season, and he came in and had a huge year and created, along with Faulk and Warner, the greatest show on turf. And that team was explosive. They scored a bunch of points. They ended up flying through the regular season. Warner was the MVP. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. Torrey Holt catches a touchdown in the Super Bowl in the first half. A great rookie year for Holt, an absolutely awesome start to his career, and winning the Super Bowl's first year. Great accomplishment for him in that offense. Number 3, Randy Moss, 1998 Minnesota Vikings. Randy Moss was kind of not only an afterthought in the draft, but a lot of teams passed on him, including the Dallas Cowboys. We'll get to that in a second. He was an athletic freak, but people were worried about some of the off-the-field issues he had in college at Florida State and then at Marshall. He comes in the NFL in 1998, pairs with Chris Carter, Randall Cunningham, Carter at wide receiver, Cunningham at quarterback, and they explode on the NFL, scoring more than 500 points, going 15-1 as well. And Randy Moss sets a rookie reception touchdowns record with 17. And his most memorable performance was against the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. He only caught 3 passes that day, but for 150 yards, and all 3 went for touchdowns. Unbelievable performance for Randy Moss. Unbelievable rookie year. He's number 3 on my list. Number 2 is a guy near and dear to my heart from the 1970s. This is Tony Dorsett with the Dallas Cowboys. Dorsett was a very well-known. He won the Heisman Trophy winner as a running back with Pitt in the mid-1970s, and he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. But for whatever reason, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were an expansion franchise, decided to take Ricky Bell, running back out of Southern Cal. Their head coach, Tampa's head coach, had a connection with Bell. So Dallas then traded a few picks. Remember, Dallas was good, to the number 2 overall pick and drafted Dorsett. It was considered a massive train robbery. Dorsett comes in, rushes for 1,000 yards. Dallas flies through the regular season, ends up winning the Super Bowl in blowout fashion over the Denver Broncos. Was the start of a Hall of Fame career for Dorsett. Awesome start, winning the Super Bowl his rookie year. Big impact right away, pairing with Staubach and Drew Pearson. He's number 2 on my list. Number 1, Jim Brown. Jim Brown is probably the best football player who's ever played. I know Tom Brady's got a few claims to that title, but no one has been more dominant than Jim Brown. He joined the Cleveland Browns in the 1950s out of Syracuse. His first year in the NFL, leads them to an NFL championship, leads the NFL in rushing, would go on to break every record throughout his career. There's not a record that Jim Brown essentially didn't have from the running back position when he retired. He still has the highest yards per carry in NFL history. And keep in mind, he was back playing a position that was much closer to fullback, the way the fullback position is thought of today. An unbelievable player, probably the greatest player of all time in my book. And he came in the NFL with a bang, winning the NFL championship his rookie year in the league. All right, my honorable mention, another guy near and dear to my heart. This is Dak Prescott. And great rookie year, obviously came in, went 13-3, won the division title from Dallas. But I think the way he came in was kind of special, right? Because Romo was the guy. Everyone knew Romo. He was the face of the franchise. They had won a playoff game a couple years earlier. The year before Romo got hurt, and they really wanted Romo to come back because remember, Romo got hurt in 2015. They were terrible all that year. Coming into 2016, hey, Romo's back. They're going to be good. and he breaks his back essentially in the preseason, and everyone's like, there's the season. It's all falling apart. This is another terrible team, another 4-win team. Who is this Dakota Prescott? Who the heck is this guy? Well, all he does is come in, go 13-3 as a starter, lead him to the division title, and kind of just takes over, coming out of nowhere a little bit, kind of almost like Kurt Warner with the Rams, and kind of joining the NFL hierarchy of big names in football. And I think that's really just a really, really cool deal from the way that shifted in just like a short period of time to go, Romo's the guy, season's ruined. Prescott comes out of nowhere, has a great rookie year, and that's why he's my honorable mention of the top rookie seasons in NFL history.
That's a great list, Nick. And I think, Dak has definitely had an incredible season. No one would have expected him to do what he did. But that leads us to my list, and right out of the gate, I sort of broke the rules already a little bit. It's not exactly a defensive player, but number 5 on my list is Devin Hester, Chicago Bear and Baltimore Ravens legend Devin Hester. There has never been a better return man / wide receiver, that's why his offense, than Devin Hester. And especially as a rookie in 2006, he came in, he scored 7 touchdowns all on returns that season. He took 3 punts back for touchdowns. He took 3 kickoffs back for touchdowns, including one in the Super Bowl that year. And he also got a missed field goal, returned 108 yards for, at the time, an NFL record longest return until broken by Nick? Jacoby Jones.
Yep.
Yes, 109. But he took, at the time, NFL record longest return, 108 yards back for a touchdown. What more can you do? Like, you break an NFL record, run a touchdown back in the Super Bowl, and probably set records for return touchdowns in a year. Like, how much more of a breakout season could you want as a player? So that's my number 5. Number 4, an offensive lineman, you may ask, and I say to you, yes, Ryan Clady of the Denver Broncos. This guy was a absolute monster. He did things that people couldn't even dream of. As a rookie, he came in and he only allowed half a sack all season. Half a sack. He's the only offensive tackle in the league that has allowed fewer than 1 sack that year. He also only committed 3 penalties. Like, what more could you want from a rookie tackle to come in, not allow any sacks, and he doesn't draw penalties either? He obviously is smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's not going to get called off the ball or anything like that. That is just one of the best. You could not ask more of a season from a rookie, and that's why he's one of the best seasons by a rookie I could ever think of. All right, number 3, I'm going to go way, way back now, Nick. We have, in my number 3 spot, Bill Groman. Legendary, I guess some call him an end. He's kind of was like a wide receiver of sorts. He played for the Houston Oilers in the 60s. He's a Hall of Famer George Blanda at the time, and obviously having a great quarterback like Blanda, he caught 72 passes that year, almost 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he led the NFL in yards per catch, longest touchdown, and most yards per game that season. An incredible feat for a rookie. He didn't really do too much after that, so to speak. He kind of fell off a little bit, but that rookie season for Groman was something of we had never seen before at the time. He was probably one of the first true superstar receivers to come out in a rookie season and do something like that. My number 2 pick is one we all know, more of a college legend and less of an NFL legend, but he was still great as well. We've got Earl Campbell, another Houston Oiler. He was the top overall pick in the 1978 draft. He exploded on the scene He was dominant his first few years in the NFL, but as a rookie in 1978, he carried the ball 300 times for almost 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, won the rushing title that season, was named Offensive Player of the Year. I don't even know if they had Rookie of the Year at that time, but still, he was Offensive Player of the Year, and that was his first for 3 straight seasons to be Offensive Player of the Year. What more could you want from a guy come out and just put up a dominant performance as the best rusher in the NFL that year? I don't think you can get much better than that. Unless you are number 1 on my list, best rookie season, Gale Sayers of the Chicago Bears. Now, Gale Sayers is a legend in Chicago. He's known, people say he has one of the greatest rookie seasons ever in NFL history because he did it all. In 1965 is when he came into the league. He rushed for like 867 yards, 14 touchdowns, and an insane 5.2 yards per carry. He caught 30 passes for 500 yards and another 6 touchdowns. He returned 16 punts, 14.9 yards per punt, and he returned 1 for a touchdown. And he also returned kicks, 21 kicks, 31.4 yards per kick, and he returned 1 of those for a touchdown as well. 22 touchdowns. At that time, that was the most touchdowns in NFL history in one season. And he also set a single season record for all-purpose yards for 2,272 all-purpose yards. And he had one of the greatest games by any players ever, probably, when he played against the San Francisco 49ers. And he's just one of the greats, and that is why I have him in the number 1 spot on my list. Now, my honorable mention is someone that kind of gets forgotten a lot. Denver Broncos running back Mike Anderson. Now, he's got a pretty cool story. He was in the Marine Corps for 4 years after high school, and then he went to college for 4 years after that, and this led him to be drafted in the year 2000 by the Broncos. He's like 27 when he was a rookie. That's like a Hayden Hurst levels of being an old man. He played all 16 games as a rookie, but he started 12, and in Shanahan's offense, he got off to a quick start. He carried the ball 300 times, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 yards a carry. We've got, the same old. That seems to be the magic number. 1,500 yards, a lot of touchdowns in the teens, and 5 yards a carry. What a great rookie season. And in week 13 that year, when they played the New Orleans Saints, he ran for 250 yards, 4 touchdowns. What an incredible season by a rookie to come out and show that you're one of the best running backs in the NFL at that point in time in the league. So that is who I have on my list for best rookie seasons.
Yeah, it's a great list. I think one of the takeaways with the Ronan and the Sailor and the Sayers picks is, remember that they got those numbers in a shortened season.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like we forget the seasons weren't 16 games back then,
No,
and they still got
65. It was a 14-game season.
Yeah,
so it was a lot harder to put up those numbers in fewer games, obviously. So much more impressive for Sayers and crew for what they're able to do.
Yeah, and that, these are just incredible athletes doing incredible things. You'd be happy to have pretty much anyone on this list on your team at that point in time. So that's it. But I think those are great lists, Nick. I'm really impressed with our knowledge sometimes, our ability to pull out some great players in history that people may have forgotten about. But that is it, Nick. That is our show. I think it's another great one for the history books. Maybe we'll have best rookie season podcast one day. People are going to be talking about our rookie season. But you got anything else you want to say?
No, just thanks to everyone who stuck around and watched and listened to the whole show. We really appreciate it. We work our butts off trying to come up with the best content that we can for you, the viewer and listener. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we really appreciate it. Please leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe if you like what you hear. Give us some feedback. It allows us to come up with better content for you guys. That's what we're all about. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at SMI Football Show. Always, you can find us on our website, smishow.com. I'm Nick Rudman. That's Andrew Mize. Mize, any final thoughts?
That's it. We got another great week of football coming up this week. I can't wait to see it happen, and I can't wait to see you next week.